the fence expert. Who's that guy in that orange shirt? Who must be the fence expert? It's almost time to talk about the fences. It's time to discuss operations and expenses. It's time, it's really time to elevate small businesses. It's time for Joe to drop his knowledge, it's relentless. This rhyme of mine is getting a bit ridiculous. So here we go, we're live with Joe. Enjoy the show.
What is up, Fence fam? So good to be back with you guys again. Much appreciate you guys tuning in every week to have a conversation with me and a guest about, well, everything and anything fence related. If you guys are listening to this as a podcast, you're listening to a recorded version of a live conversation I host most every Saturday from 10 a.m. Central to 11-ish Central. Depending on where the conversation takes us, it very well could end up being a little bit longer, but it always starts at 10 a.m. Central when we're having a live, if that makes sense. Next couple weeks, next week we do have a guest, and the next few weeks we'll be offline for we've got some events here at Ozark Fence. We've got kind of a, what are they calling this? Pets and Pumpkins. So Ozark Fence is sponsoring. Anyway, appreciate you guys joining us. If, like I said, if you're listening on a podcast, we encourage you to come most every Saturday. So watch the channels, whether you watch on YouTube or Facebook. You can search Joe Everest and you'll see upcoming lives. Typically, we announce them Friday for the next day's broadcast, who's going to be on, that sort of thing. You can set a reminder, the whole 9 yards. Tune in there so you can have your questions answered live. You can also watch a replay of the lives and a comment there. All the comments come through to us all the same, me and the team. We'd love to answer your guys' questions. If you guys are watching live, thank you so much for coming in. Before we get to the meat and potatoes of the live, I want to remind you guys, this live is sponsored by Expert Professional Wood Care Products. Caleb, Ashley, and the whole team take care of my team incredibly well. We've been customers longer than they've been sponsors. They're sponsors because we were customers, but we love using their products. We've tried most all the other products out there on the market, and we settled on the Expert line of stains because it's the stain that doesn't stink. It makes me feel better when I'm putting my team members in direct contact with it. We're putting it in people's yards where their kids and pets would come in contact with it. It doesn't have the chemical smell, so it makes me feel better. Now, it's also nice that it covers great. It's a fully penetrating oil-based stain, so we know not only do we feel safer, but it's actually a really good product. It's a really good product for our customers, better than they might find at a big box home improvement store. If you're not interested in staining, you don't have the facilities to pre-stain, don't want to stain on site, I don't blame you. Staining on site can get, without the proper training, it can get out of hand pretty fast. But you still want to offer a pre-stained product to your customers. Also, check out Gopherwood. The pre-stained product, you can get it. There's a variety of different lumbers available, cedar being the main one. You still use the Expert line of stain. It's a great product. You don't have to pre-stain it. You don't have to worry about staining it on site, but you can still offer a pre-stained product. Check out Gopherwood. All right, with all that being said, I want to welcome on Clint Iams. He's the Executive Director of the North American Fence Contractors Association right now. Clint, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Joe?
Doing well, doing well. I appreciate you taking time out of a personal trip there to come on the show and talk about the project you guys have coming up.
No, it's worthwhile to talk about, and I appreciate you asking me to come on and help use your platform to get some more help to North Carolina. So thank you.
Absolutely. I am absolutely happy to. So last week you'd kind of dropped in the chat, said, "Hey, we've got this going on." We shared it out, but then also I said, "Hey, we'd love to have you on to try to talk more about it for some people that maybe want some more information, or maybe folks that weren't with us last week. It would be good to have a conversation and talk about what you guys have coming up."
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is typically the time frame if you guys, the viewers, watched the channel last year around this time, a little bit later in the month, but about this time of the month, we were in Arlington doing a service project there, which is an annual event for NAFCA. Is that right?
Correct. For over a decade, NAFCA has gone to Arlington National Cemetery, typically tearing out old, dilapidated, beat-up fence and replacing it with nice new fence that's been donated by our members or people in the industry. Obviously, there's many government facilities that are a bit ran down. Arlington is one of those facilities that should not be ran down. So we've done that for over a decade, and we had a project slated for the last weekend in October to do the same thing, to go in and replace about 120 feet of 8-foot ornamental steel that was going to be the new materials being donated by Iron World out of Laurel, Maryland.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So we had that all set up for that last weekend in October, but then situation changed.
And unreal. So last year's project, do you remember about the footage we did last year? It sounds like it was in that ballpark, wasn't it? Or maybe a hair more, but in that ballpark.
It was, yeah. We did about 220 feet last year, October 23. It was about 220, 225, something like that.
What a neat project.
It's very
to be able to give back.
It is. It's a very rewarding, very fulfilling experience to go to Arlington, to be able to use our trade, our skills, our craft, and give back in that way. It's a very rewarding experience. If you've never been, be sure to try to make it to one, either now in November or in the future. Absolutely,
guys. So probably for more information on those, we're going to kind of get away from that subject here in a minute. But to learn more, probably following NAFCA on the social media platforms would be best. Or
absolutely, follow the socials. We have our Facebook, our Instagram, our LinkedIn. Right to our website. It's the number 4 NAFCA.com. It's pretty easy to navigate and see events and what's coming up. But so we decided to push this year's Arlington till November 22nd because we wanted to send some help down to North Carolina.
Absolutely. So, talking about that, let's get a little bit of context. I mean, I'm sure everyone's clear on what we're talking about, why we're talking about it, but maybe a little bit of context. Hurricanes came up from the Gulf. I guess the first hurricane. There's been another now, but really tore a path of devastation. Florida, Georgia, up through the Carolinas, but it seemed like, and guys, understand, I'm not minimizing any of the damage done by the storm, but it seemed like North Carolina this round was hit hardest, not only by the direct impact, but also by kind of the follow-on consequences of just, what is it, like 30 inches of rain or something like that, just a massive amount.
Yeah, so when you think about it, Florida is sort of built to handle a hurricane. It's flat, it's sandy soil, but Western North Carolina, it's the Appalachian Mountains. And so when you get 30 inches of rain on a mountain, it becomes literally 30 feet of water at the bottom of that mountain. So had a conversation with Ryan Sloop, who's a fence contractor in North Carolina, and they're saying that's what it was, about 1 inch of rain equaled about 1 foot of water. So,
Golly.
so that equated to 30 feet or more in some situations of water running through those valleys and just washing out whole towns.
Well, and it wasn't just water, right? So the videos I've seen, it was everything the water took with it,
Yes.
largely mud, debris, and all that. I mean, vehicles. There's one video of a container just rushing down the street, hits a light pole, and it tears the container in half, just to kind of demonstrate the power of the water that was moving through the area and the state in general. A state that has some pretty secluded areas to begin with. I mean, just the Appalachian region itself. There's a group that not a group maybe, but there's a segment that almost prides themselves on how remote they can be and being independent, that sort of thing, which not here. I mean, that's fine. But the problem is they were remote to begin with, and now even more so.
Yeah. So, since NAFCA's board decided to make this effort, push Arlington back, we already had a weekend scheduled. So that last weekend in October, we're going to have some boots on the ground going down there to help however we can. In the process of trying to find out what we're going to do, I've been reaching out to any possible contact that I have in the area. One of our board members, Nancy Bringle of North State Fences in Eastern North Carolina, she's been tremendously helpful with this as well. She's reaching out to organizations. But we've talked to Ryan Sloop, who's in North Carolina, fence contractor. I believe he helps out with AFA school, but I might be mistaken on that. Also reached out to the AFA Carolinas president, Kyle Robinson. He's been helping to feed us some information. But yeah, it's pretty devastating what happened in that area. There's places that are going to be without power for another 3 to 4 weeks. No power, no water for 4 or 5 weeks. And now also the roads are gone, so you can't even really get supplies into some of those areas. So there's true need.
Yeah, I was watching some videos, and the crazy thing here, Clint, is largely we're getting our information about this from social media, not necessarily from major media or mainstream media, whatever you'd like to call it. It's coming a lot through social. But I was watching.
I can't figure that part out either. And they really, if it weren't for, we've vacationed in the area. We've vacationed in Nashville a number of times. And if it weren't for that, I don't know that I would have really paid attention. But whenever I saw that Asheville was only accessible by air, that stopped me, because I've been there. I know what it's like. And that's a high elevation town. Yeah. And for it to only be accessible by air, that's tremendous amounts of water and flooding and damage. And that's what sort of tuned me in. And then I start watching, and I'm seeing all of this on the socials, but it's not on the news. There's very little bit of coverage of what's going on down there.
Yeah, it's confusing. Absolutely confusing when you have a national event of that scale. But that being said, so I was watching some of these videos on social media, and it's just astonishing to watch mudslides coming off the mountains that are just wiping away houses. I mean, pulling them off foundations and just washing them away. I was watching another video. It's a group that has mules. And so they were packing mules and taking supplies in, because even they've got four-wheeler teams. They've got all sorts. We're taking stuff in because now this is an FAA, so this is more of a national rule or law. It's not law, but a rule that's in effect, I'd suppose. that you can't land unless you've been in contact and you have permission from the person to land, or you know the person, and which they're probably trying to prevent looting. They're probably trying to prevent, so understood. But that's why these teams, these areas that are only accessible by air, we're still sending in mule teams and four-wheelers because aid from helicopters can't be given directly to those people. It's a complex situation. It sounds like,
absolutely.
and that's just from my perspective in Missouri, watching it on social media. I can't imagine actual conditions on the ground, just how confusing and frustrating that must be.
Yeah, and so we have to find the route we're going to take, and we're still working on that. What I do know is there will be boots on the ground the last weekend in October. What I don't know yet is exactly which town we're heading to. Right now they sort of have the areas broke down in areas that are still in recovery and then areas that are at restoration. So recovery means it's still pretty dire. There's no power, no roads, no water. Still trying to rescue or even assess, is there anybody in that area, because that's how remote it is. Restoration is they've kind of done the initial cleanup. They're getting some things set back up, starting to go in, help clean out the houses that didn't get washed out, clean out the debris, things like that. So we're going to probably focus more on that restoration area because I think that's better suited to what we're able to help with.
Well, I love that NAFCA is getting involved in this because it's a group. I mean, you already had a weekend, kind of set aside for a service type project, so it worked out really well. But you're bringing together construction-minded folks, right? So, granted, the particular skill set is fencing and fence construction, but we tend to be pretty handy with just equipment in general, tools in general. So if we're talking about rebuilding or supply chain, we seem to be pretty good at figuring out supply chain issues as well, just as we're moving materials here and there. So it seems like the right group of people, or just a great, not the right group of people, I guess, but a great group of people to get involved in a situation like this.
NAFCA has sort of redefined itself as a service-based organization. And when this whole situation first transpired, the first idea was, well, hey, we can get some materials donated. We can take materials in and start help. Because as we all know, when a flood happens, it washes fence right out. Fence is a giant net, catches everything in that flood water and gets yanked out. So the first idea was that we'd go in and maybe build some fence, which is obviously what we know how to do. But it seems like the situation is just so heavy. We're probably going to be more likely helping with cleanup more than building fence. We do have several companies and manufacturers that have been already offering to send materials. I do think that we might help facilitate getting some materials in the area. We might get a little bit of stuff built, but at least then it will be in the area. So in the coming months, it can be distributed and help to rebuild everything in that area.
Yeah, it seems like when one of these storms comes through, it's months until you get to actual fencing, right? Because a lot of people are still trying to put together their lives or what's left of their possessions, much less thinking about fence at this point. So I could see where the help would probably be most needed in distribution and just and probably some cleanup, quite a bit of cleanup, I would think. But it sounds like you guys are staying pretty flexible in exactly where it's headed, where the help is headed, and what that help is going to look like.
Yeah, so I mentioned Nancy, who's on our board. She reached out to the North Carolina Cattlemen's Association, and they are helping to kind of funnel us in the right direction. We haven't quite got it finalized yet, but it looks like there is an area that might have a large equestrian facility that we can use as our home base set up. And that way there's also a place for us to stay, because there's no hotels. There's no, everything's complete. If there is a hotel that didn't get washed out, it's completely booked up with everybody who's been displaced. So this trip, it's going to be a car camping, tent camping, maybe indoor, a church basement, or some kind of facility like this equestrian facility that might work out. It's not going to be staying at the Ritz by any means. It's going to be going down there and working pretty hard. And I'm sure it's going to be mentally draining, because everything that I hear, it's pretty bad. That's toys in the mud. The loss of life is pretty drastic. I've had multiple people tell me that there's just a smell of death in the air. So it's pretty tragic thing, but that's why we're trying to stay flexible so we can head into the area where we can offer the most impact and help the most with our skill set. And as you mentioned, fencers they're resilient. We have a very unique trade, and I think we're very accustomed to rolling with the punches, and that's how we're approaching this here.
You know, the thing I love about the fence industry the most, probably, especially lately, is you've seen the fence family, fence contractors come together and support each other, support their communities, and this falls right in line with that. And I have a feeling you're going to see an overwhelming show of support, just however people can, So let's dive into that a little bit. How can people help and get involved?
Certainly. So the first thing too, mentioning Fence Fam, one of the great things about our industry is this camaraderie. As soon as we went live last Saturday, Susan K. Worley of the FWA is sharing all of our stuff. We've reached out with the AFA. I mentioned Kyle Robinson of the Carolinas chapter. We've been in communication. Ken Throckmorton from the Ohio chapter of the AFA just said they're going to send money to us to help with the mission. So it's really great to be part of an industry that everybody just comes together to work on something like this. There's no turf war or anything here. We're just going in to try to help people, and everybody's coming along and helping as well. So that's great.
Well, and I'll say this, the Carolinas chapter, just the Carolinas region. So we had a few tornadoes come through Oklahoma and just wreaked devastation, not on this scale, quite obviously, but wreaked devastation. One of the first people that had reached out to the Midwest chapter was the Carolinas chapter, and they just said, hey, we're sending funds, use it however you want, use it however you need. And then so to turn around and be asking, for the return, I think they'll see quite a lot of people step up in this. One thing I think is important to note is we'll be talking about this for the next year, probably.
Easy.
Just the recovery, just the rebuilding, just every aspect of this. This is going to be a years long project, if not decades long, just getting everything back to right. So, but this is taking the initiative to be in on the ground floor of the rebuild recovery, phase, just leading from the front.
If you're not familiar with the area and if you need some level of perspective, there are two major interstates that are going to be shut down for 12 to 18 months. What other kind of event have we ever had in recent years or ever that shut down two major interstates for that amount of time? So that if you're not familiar with the area, if you haven't been paying attention to or haven't noticed because it's not being on the news, that's a pretty good little litmus test right there to tell you how drastic the damage to that area was to have two major interstates shut down for that amount of time.
Well, that's what they were saying is the western portion of North Carolina isn't accessible from outside states via interstates, from established roads. And that itself is a bit eye-opening to where, if something like that were to happen in southwest Missouri, we'd still have access in from northern Missouri, from eastern Missouri. You could still come up from likely Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Kansas. The Appalachia region itself is just remote in terms of terrain, ability just to move anything around in there. So for this to happen there, it almost seems like, and I understand there's probably worse cases out there, but it seems like a pretty worst case scenario.
It definitely does. It definitely does. So you had asked about what can be done. What are we looking for? There's kind of three main things. I made a little list here of what we're looking for. And this is the part that I hate to say, but the first thing is just send money.
Sure.
We have a link right on our website. We purposely didn't use GoFundMe because GoFundMe takes a pretty high cut out of it. So we're running it right through the NAFCA's books. 100% of what comes in on that link goes right back to North Carolina. We don't know yet exactly what entity it will go to, whether it be us buying supplies to take into the area or giving to an organization, but 100% of that money is going to North Carolina. So that's the most helpful because then that helps us, especially now we're 2 weeks out. In a week, we can take that and start buying the things that are needed for us to take into the area.
Sure.
Right now, there's a shortage. There's no generators because everything in the area has been bought out. Fuel can be in short supply. It is October in the Appalachian Mountains. It is getting cold. So clothing and blankets and things like that are needed. With this, though, there are really good things. And talking with Sloop, he said that there is an abundance of water down there, that they have received so much water that that's not even a need right now, which is great to hear, that things are making it in. But this, by looking at the financial aspect of it, helps us to take what is needed that last
Yeah.
weekend in October, not something that maybe was needed a week ago.
Sure. Yeah, I remember water. So when we had a pretty major tornado come through Joplin, what was that, oh 04 maybe? Oh 03, oh 04, oh 05. And that was one of the things was there was pallets of water stacked on every corner
Mhm.
just because everyone sends water. And they were, the state was just saying, hey, we're fine on water. We actually need plywood. We actually need this and that. So I like the fact that we're not talking about just sending pallets of water. We're talking about actually taking, or you're actually talking about taking what they actually need.
That's the goal. And then, like I said, once we have a little better direction, that'll help us to fine tune what it is we're taking in.
Sure.
So by early next week, we should have this kind of ironed out. I'd mentioned Nancy working with the North Carolina Cattlemen's Association. Ryan Sloop is going to get me some numbers for the county extension agents.
Okay.
Most areas have an extension agent tied to maybe the university of the state or whatever.
Yeah.
He's thinking that will help give us some direction. We did originally start looking into Samaritan's Purse, obviously a very well-known philanthropic organization. However, we're a little concerned that we're fairly small compared to how much stuff they have coming in. We
Sure.
really wanted to try to get somewhere where we can really get boots right on the ground and be in there to help. So
Yeah.
we'll have a little bit better direction early next week. Stay tuned on the website. That little
Okay.
link that we have, I'm going to be updating that with the plans once we have those in place.
Good. So, and it sounds like what you guys are trying to figure out right now is how to be most impactful.
Exactly.
Is how to make the most of what the time you have and the resources you have. I definitely like to hear that. So, impact is what is needed, right? So sometimes you'll see, and in our experience just with tornadoes, sometimes you'll see large organizations come in that overall incredibly helpful, but in terms of local impact, maybe not as impactful. I'm saying
Sure.
that word a lot, but it's important, right?
Yeah.
That you guys are strategically going in and saying, hey, we're going to be flexible. We're not going in with a rigid plan. That we're going in and figuring it out as we get there and being flexible to figure out exactly where the need is.
That was our when we decided this. It would be 8 days ago. It was Friday of last week that we had the board vote via email saying, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." One of the things I stressed is we're going to have to be extremely flexible with the logistics, and that's very difficult for me. I need everything lined up. I need to know what's going on. But this is just a situation where you have to be very flexible. But it's coming together really nicely. We have multiple options of places that we think could work out as our home base, and then that will give us a little focus on where we're going to head. So cash, huge. That helps us to buy what's needed to take down there. If you are in an area, like if I'm in southwestern Pennsylvania, I'm personally going down. So anybody in that area that wants to make a donation, maybe a generator, something like that, reach out to us because we've got people from all around the country coming in for this, or tentatively coming in. They're looking for the final plan. So you can always donate those materials, especially once we know what those are going to be. And then finally, you can also, if you are able, if you're willing, if you want to, we are looking for people to put on the boots, come down and join us that last weekend in October. Be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Looking probably the bulk of the work part of it will be Friday, Saturday. Gives kind of Thursday night and Sunday for travel. So those are kind of the three main things that can be done with this. Or also, finally, I didn't think to put this on the list, but just share it on your socials. We have a really big network of people here that have really sophisticated social media marketing things. If you're able to share that information out, and that will help raise awareness for what we're doing.
Absolutely. Mark, can you throw up the link, the NAFCA link that we had shared before? So following the link, sharing that out, also following your socials, sharing the social postings. It seems like you guys have done a great job as far as trying to get the information out there. But we could certainly use the Fence Fam to help spread that message because social media is kind of fickle to where they don't, you could have 100,000 followers and only 1,000 of them see any given message. So the repetition, but also other people sharing it out makes it possible for more people to see that message.
Absolutely.
So whether you're following, so we've got the link up on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you're listening to this as a podcast, the link is the number, so www, the number 4, NAFCA.com. We'll put that in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can click into the show notes, copy and paste it. But starting that's the place to start. Is that right?
Absolutely. And if you can even go right directly to the North Carolina relief effort by just adding a /NC. So it's super easy. But if you go to the main page right at the top, it says North Carolina. It takes you right in. I have it set up that as donations come in, it real-time updates with what the donations are, so we can see how much is being raised. So right now, I think we're a little over 2,000, but just yesterday and this morning, I found out of another $2,000 coming in. So literally today, it doubled. So
very nice.
Yeah, it's great to see the Fence family coming together like this and helping out.
Agreed. Speaking of the Fence family, let's say hello to a few people. There's some comments in here I'd like for us to address. But first, we'll start at the top. Justin's tuning in from the weapons range in western Nebraska, shooting a M320 this morning, and then a 50 caliber to end of the day. What a way to wrap up a day, huh? Great guest on. We'll be listening between shooting. So if you guys watched last week's show, this is just kind of a brief pause in this conversation. Justin has a program he does every year where he provides food, Thanksgiving meals to soldiers. He had also left a mailing address if you guys would like to participate in that. Thanksgiving, that's right, we're adding Christmas this year, or he is as well. So that information is there. Aaron Preston, good morning, Aaron. Said high of 82, low of 64. Clint and I were just having this conversation about how wild the weather is this time of year. But it's supposed to be 82 or 80. No, it's supposed to be, well, let's see. It's supposed to be 88 here, 55 for a low. It's like, what are we? You don't know what. One, you don't know what to wear out in the morning. I can't tell you. I've got a stack of hoodies in my office right now because I wear them in, and it gets warm, and then I forget them because it's warm when I go home. Which is going to lead to number 2. Everybody's getting ready to get sick because it's warm and it's cold. It's warm and it's cold. And anyway, great working weather. Agreed. I like the cooler end of it. And, if we're looking at like 70 for a high, 65 for a high, that is phenomenal working weather in one guy's opinion. Aaron goes on to say, what do you think about pressure treated yellow wood, 1x6 by 16 foot boards? Not a fan of treated pine in general. I know generalities are never great, but that being said, yellow wood, I think it's one of the better pressure treated products out there. That's my opinion. And it's not a cedar, but there's also worse pressure treated out there. Clint, do you have much experience with yellow wood?
I don't. So for my business, primarily we do ag fence. We do a lot with 1x6 16 poplar, and I like the treated poplar to work with. And we do everything from board fence to actually we're doing a little bit more residential because there's getting to be fewer farmers in our area. And I just did one around 4th of July using those boards on Postmasters horizontal. Ooh. And it turned out really nice. It was a nice finished product. But I like the poplar wood too. It's a full 1 inch by a full 6 inch thick, so it's good and hardy. And poplars are really pretty wood if you've never played around with it.
I was going to say it's got a lot of character.
It does.
It's not just a kind of a bland plain board, yeah. So Aaron, you're on a good track. It sounds like. Justin says, thank you for the services offered by your group to the fallen heroes who served our nation. I tell you, the Arlington project, I've only done it once, but once was enough for me to know like how impactful this is, especially when the leadership comes out and says, hey, we really thank you for this. This is making a big impact. Obviously, so what we did last year was right at the visitor center. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was front and center. It was a special day, to be sure.
I've had the fortune of being there. I've lost track of how many of the projects I've been to myself because I was at some of the projects even before I was on the board. But every time you're there, you're doing work, you're making the place look better and look nicer, but you're watching funeral processions and you're realizing what's going on there. So like Justin, I appreciate him saying thank you, but I can't say you're welcome because it's just it's just such a fulfilling thing to be able to do, to give back in that way. It really is.
Talk about a sombering moment. So in the morning, there were some donuts, and everyone was kind of jovial, and we're removing fences and this and that. And then you get off in the distance, you hear the first round of gunshots, and it's like, oh, that's actually what we're doing here. Is we're paying respect. You know, we're making this facility nicer so that it reflects just how the nation, you know, respects these people that have given everything. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the day was it. It was a good day. I don't want to say it wasn't. I had a blast, but it was also a bit sombering to know, hey, there is a reason why we're here, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
The fact that we need a facility that large is a whole different conversation, I think. But anyway, pick up on Arlington. We're going to come back to North Carolina, but picking up on Arlington. So it's towards the end of November. Is that
correct? We pushed it to November 22nd. That would be the Friday before Thanksgiving. So it's 6 days before Thanksgiving. One of the things this is also great too, our point of contact at Arlington was super helpful with that transition, because it takes a lot of legwork to get that project set up, to get the permission, the approval to be there. So they were very receptive of the idea of what we were doing to help out North Carolina. So they said November's fine. They just asked that we avoided Veterans Day, because obviously that's a very busy day at the cemetery. So we figured that Friday before Thanksgiving would be a good time, ideally before people are traveling for Thanksgiving. So it's the 22nd of November, that Friday. It's around 120 feet of 8 foot tall ornamental aluminum. Iron World donated the material. We don't even have tear out this year, so it's just a new stretch of fence to kind of help block. As I noted last year, unfortunately, the cemetery is getting more people trying to break in and do nefarious things. So they're really trying to up their security measures on the property around there to keep people from coming in. So we're adding 120 feet, another area to keep people from going through a shrub and getting into the cemetery.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad to hear there's no removal, because that was a decent part of the day. I tell you what, whoever installed that fence to begin with installed it to last. It was gnarly. It was a driven post, but it was anchored in such a way that even with equipment, it was difficult to get those things out.
Yeah, those angle iron pieces driven at the 45-degree angles. Even though our post spacing was different for the new going in, we kept running into that angle iron trying to auger the new holes. It was not fun.
It wasn't at all. So what area, just general area, are you working in this year? So last year was there at the is it the Welcome Center?
I believe it's listed as either the Welcome or the Visitor Center. I can't remember what they name it as, but it's their primary point of entrance is where we were at last year. Same general area. We're just across the road from there. So literally just across the road from where we were working at last year. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Keep on saying hello, guys. If you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. We're getting to those here in just as we work through these. We've got the website. So, and then obviously to go straight to North Carolina, you would just /NC to get directly to the North Carolina effort there at the NAFCA site.
Exactly. But if you go to the main page, right in the top row of menu buttons, it says North Carolina. So it's pretty straightforward, easy to find.
Perfect. And the /NC is where they would find the donations link?
Correct. Yep. Okay. And that's also where I'm going to continue to push out details. Once we know what town we're heading to, what to bring, what to expect, I'm going to just keep updating that page so it'll just stay fresh and current with what the plan is.
Okay, so if you're planning on traveling and being boots on the ground at the event, it would probably be best to bookmark that page and just refresh it as you're getting closer to leaving, that sort of thing.
The other thing people can do, and it's on this page as well, but there's a little link to send us an email at NAFCA. If you are interested or considering, send me an email. I'll put you on the distribution thread that we have. So we've had an email running for the last week, about once a day, every 2 days. I'll just send out an update. Hey, this is what we're looking at. This is the area. But once we really get things planned, that's going to be helpful for people to stay in the loop with what the plan is. So feel free to reach out and be added on to that distribution email if you are wanting to come down and be part of that.
Got it. Absolutely. Robert Evers, thank you for sending help to North Carolina. I mean, I think it goes, no thanks needed. I mean, I would assume that's the answer, right?
It's exactly it. It's there's a need, and as I mentioned, NAFCA has a service-oriented focus, and we're going to serve as the best we can.
I love that so much. Speaking of Nancy Bringle says, "Go NAFCA." Absolutely. So, Justin, now this was early on in the conversation. This was right after the live started. Military folks in North Carolina have been asking for helicopters to reach remote areas with no roads, trails, etc. So, and I was, again, social media, so take this for what it's worth, but Elon was giving, was talking about, so they were distributing Starlink, or trying to distribute Starlink to at least try to provide some internet so that people could reach out and say, hey, here's what we need and how we need it. But yeah, the FAA has some restriction in place to where, because they were talking about they can't even like airdrop it. Like they can't just drop things down because there was some. Now, this is likely 2 or 3 days old, this video, by the time we see it.
Sure.
This could be outdated information. But it sounded like that was really hampering just the ability to get in and give people, whatever resources that they need, or help them evacuate out was this restriction. And like I said, I'm sure it's in place to prevent looting. I mean, looting, the other videos I had seen made it sound like looting was a very, very real problem, which is, oh man, talk about some bad karma. So when that tornado came through in Tulsa, we were there on day 2, just because we've got contracts with some like response type, not agencies, but response companies to come provide perimeter security, or the perimeter fencing security. So we were doing apartment complexes. So we would go just enclose apartment complexes because people were going into these places and looting stuff out of the apartments. It's like, man, I tell you what, it got to where, and I'm sure North Carolina is the same now, and likely Florida, but it got to be where they had enact curfews, and the sheriff got on, and actually, so the sheriff got on and said, hey, if you are found after dark, it was like a shoot on sight situation where they're like, we're not messing around, like we're protecting, and you're getting in the way and all this. Someone obviously didn't take that serious enough, and come to find out he wasn't kidding. But anyway, so looting is a very real deal, and I think that's what they're trying to prevent is with this whole FAA situation. But like I said, that could be 2 or 3 days out of that could not be current. Aaron Preston says we have a whole lot of damage from Milton. It sounds like Milton just did, and like I said, I don't want to minimize damage done elsewhere. There was an incredible. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen the picture that's floating around is a nighttime picture, like from a high altitude, showing all the lights kind of in the southern United States prior to and then after, and there is just a swath cut through the southeast United States. So it was impactful for a lot of people.
The eye of that storm didn't really break up till it hit the Georgia-North Carolina line, and that's a distance, for a hurricane to go that far inland. And you're exactly right. There's a swath of damage the whole way up through there. We focused on North Carolina because we don't have the ability to be everywhere. But that is an area that is fairly geographically central to a lot of our members. And that way people can kind of come in from all angles and try to come in and help and be part of it.
Well, and Western North Carolina likely doesn't have preparedness steps in place for handling hurricane damage.
Exactly.
I mean, just because it's so far inland that why would you? Why would you have, resources in place should something happen? Whereas Gulf states, no one ever wants this to happen, but Gulf states, I would think, were probably more prepared because they've seen it before. They just know we need this equipment in place. We need these warehouses that are out of reach but close nearby to get in. And whereas Western North Carolina hasn't dealt with that.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know about ever, but not in my memory has a storm of this magnitude gone through there.
Mm-hmm.
Shane Catton says, "What's up, y'all? Happy Saturday." Hello, Shane.
It's happy birthday to Shane, too.
Oh, that's right. Today, I saw that notification. Happy birthday, Shane. It would be a happier birthday for you if I don't sing you happy birthday, but just imagine that I did. And then, me not singing is actually a present. So, what is up, Matt Schaefer? Ryan Sloop is helping as much as he can, taking loads to strategic places. Absolutely. You have to be careful what you say on here because depending on which platform we're on, there's different guidelines on terms of service. Fence Guy Friday, what is up? Says, good morning, gentlemen. Sounds like a great plan to help out. Craig, couldn't agree anymore. Craig, if you guys aren't familiar with NAFCA, you definitely should be. Absolutely great group of guys. Shane says NAFCA is killing it. Agreed.
Thank you, sir.
Al Martins, we know this guy. President of NAFCA, is that right?
Correct.
I mean, I know him through Fence Armor and the like, but president of NAFCA as well.
That's right.
Nancy says no mints on our pillows. That's not the objective of this weekend. Justin says, what's part of a brief this morning? Those that don't know, Justin's in the Nebraska National Guard. So the State Guard in Nebraska is gathering weather-related clothing items. As mentioned, cold weather's coming, so many have lost everything. So it's great to hear they're kicking in there as well, as far away as Nebraska. That's excellent. What's up, Brent? Good morning, Joe. Doing God's work. Well, I'm just sitting here talking about it. This guy's the one, and Clint will then follow that up likely by saying it's a team effort. But NAFCA are the ones that are really doing it. I'm just sitting here talking about it. Aaron, we've all heard this joke. But in this regards, the joke doesn't apply to this necessarily. All right. Ryan Sloop, what's up, Ryan? This is a long marathon relief. Good on y'all. Yeah, this will be years of rebuilding, and I mean, this level of devastation. When you see this in other areas, there's some areas that just don't recover, right? No. So people just kind of pick up and move on. They're like, "This is." I have a feeling you might see some of that as well.
Two sort of thoughts on that. One of the things Ryan shared with me, which does not at all surprise me, it is so true, is that as he's been there, because he's kind of at ground zero going in and trying to help these people, they're offering to give somebody a sandwich, somebody that literally just lost everything. Mm-hmm. And the mindset of this person is like, I'm okay, but my neighbor needs it more. Yeah. So actually delivering the help is almost a little bit difficult because the people are so resilient and so fiercely independent that they can't eat a sandwich if their neighbor isn't eating a sandwich. So that's the kind of mentality of these people. But I think it goes back to, what Ryan's doing and what the people that didn't lose everything but are still close to it are right there helping. America, the people is what makes America great. And I'm very thankful to be part of an organization to be able to try to go in and help. I don't feel that our government's all that great, but our people, you don't get any better than people like the people of Western North Carolina and all around this country. So that's why we're trying to make these efforts and help in that way. So appreciate what Ryan's doing down and all the information he's helping get to us to get back down there and help.
And this show will absolutely not become political, but I think what you're seeing is a lot of people frustrated at the lack of coming together, not coming together, just lack of support maybe, of saying, hey, right now is the time when they're giving you the airplane briefing, right? It's an event that your oxygen mask, whatever deploys, put it on yourself first and then help others. The idea is that you will be no good to anyone if you are yourself incapacitated, right? So you make sure you're good, and then you take care of whoever's on your left and right. This feels like that scenario, right? That this is the time to come together and help ourselves, right, as a country, right? To say, hey, we're hurting right now, and we need a serious amount of help. So when you had the first I knew about it was when you had posted last week in the chat, and I was like, this is absolutely right. This is the move for fencers in general, is to step in and say, what's needed, how can we help? I mean, we'll be back in subsequent years to help you with fence, but right now you probably need recovery type stuff. You probably need basic rebuilding. And so I applaud NAFCA for being so far out in front of this to where, I mean, it's very early days and you're already boots on the ground.
Well, we're a small organization, and small means nimble. We can make quick, turns on a decision like we did with pushing Arlington to November to be able to do this.
Well, you know what, Clint? I would applaud you guys for going to Arlington in November, meaning that to say, hey, not only are we doing this, it's the yes and, right? It's the yes, we'll do this, and we will still take care of Arlington. We'll just delay it by a month, plus or minus. I think that speaks, just very highly of NAFCA in general. To say this is still important to us, meaning Arlington. We're still committed to this, but we're also going to go help North Carolina, where it may have been easier to say, all right, guys, Arlington, we're going to have to push that to next year because this year's is. So for you guys to take on both, I think it deserves some applause as well.
We appreciate that. We've got a group of people working to try to make these things happen, make this all jive. And I couldn't do it without those people like Nancy, who's doing this work for us in North Carolina. And actually, Nancy was in charge of Arlington.
Okay.
So she's kind of getting double duty here, where she's helping with this whole big cleanup effort and helping find these places and make these connections. While also she was one that secured the donation material and is coordinating that effort for November. So, but we do have a group of people working to make this all happen. And again, we feel privileged to be able to be part of this and to be able to try to go in and help out.
Absolutely. Clint, let's take the kind of last few minutes. We got about 10 minutes left. So, guys, or however long it takes, but roughly, we can start wrapping up in 10 minutes or so, unless you guys want to chat for a while longer. If you guys have questions, now's the time to enter them in the chat. We're glad to talk about whatever. Clint, can we take a few minutes and maybe give some people that may not be familiar with NAFCA an overview of who NAFCA is? And I mean, obviously, we're learning what NAFCA is about, but
Sure.
maybe some history of NAFCA and a little bit about who NAFCA is in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So NAFCA was founded, I think it was 2012, with an emphasis on providing education and service to the defense industry, specifically looking at contractors specifically. Now, we do have a number of members that are manufacturing entities and such, but it was really focused on the contractor. For a number of years, we've done service projects at Arlington National Cemetery, Victory Junction Camp for Disabled Children that is ran by Richie Petty's organization. We did projects there. We've done other miscellaneous projects over the years. We also, for a number of years, would do a fence installation school in Sebring, Florida. So we've done a number of things over the years. In recent years, there are so many training opportunities. There's a lot of different fence conferences, things that you can attend. We noticed our numbers at the school starting to decline a bit. So we decided that we would focus in more on this philanthropic effort, doing more of these service type things. So what we are typically doing, not when we're going to North Carolina for something like this, but what we did in Florida last February, February of 24. So, 10 months ago or so, or 8 months ago, we did a volunteer service project teaching people how to build no-dig ornamental aluminum in two different ways. We were showing an I-beam method as well as a round galvanized post with a mini donut version as well. So, and that was to give back to the Florida Medal of Honor. So it's a nice kind of two birds, one stone approach. We are giving back to these organizations that are trying to honor our past or honor people in their area, such as Arlington Cemetery or the Florida Medal of Honor, but also offer free training for the industry to help continue to just elevate our trade. So we've made this push to do more philanthropic type things. We were already pushing through for Arlington because that's something we've done for so long. And then this opportunity came up. So that's the high level of who NAFCA is, what we do. But our goal is to continue to help elevate the fence industry through these service projects, offering sort of a free training while you're giving back to various groups and organizations and such.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So last year you paired up Arlington with a business development type conference as well.
We did, correct.
We did business development first, and then we did the service project after. That felt really right. in terms of education. Kind of, we'll talk about some theory in terms of, we'll talk about marketing, we'll talk about just business management in general, but also we'll do some hands-on practical as well. I mean, there's a lot of people that learned a lot about fence in that day in terms of, I mean, the struggles to get it out and some creative ways of removing fence.
Yeah.
But then also, you had brought a newer piece of machinery, a piece of machinery you had developed out, and so there's a lot of people learning about that and just learning about different methods of installation itself. One thing that I thought was neat was you had companies not only send installers, guys that are used to installing, but there were sales guys out there, there was operations guys out there that were giving back. I mean, I think that was the main reason they were pulled there, was that to be of help, be of service, but also I think they're getting a greater appreciation for, because that fence was no joke that we were putting in, so it was some pretty serious stuff as well. So it was good to see them get some hands-on, practical knowledge there as well.
It was Justin Judy of ArcSite proudly has his PhD now that he's worked his post-hole diggers.
Absolutely.
But no, it was a really good event. The business discussion the day before was top notch. There was really good ideas bouncing around the room, suggestions, thoughts. This is what I do. This didn't work. So yeah, we're always looking for things like that, ways to give back, to help offer both that business side, back end training, as well as that front end, do the project, learn a better way to build that fence.
Absolutely. I love it. So North America Fence Contractors gives an idea also about the scope of the organization. So we're not necessarily talking about the United States, but also obviously with Al Martins being the president, we're also including Canadian contractors in that as well.
Correct. We have, obviously the majority of the contractors are American contractors, but there's a fair percentage of our members that are from Canada. In the past, we actually had a few Mexican companies that were part of it. They haven't been a member since I've been at the helm. But yeah, we're reaching out to anywhere in North America to help kind of improve the fence trade in North American continent.
I think that's incredibly valuable. One, it increases our network, right? So, I mean, granted, at other events, you'll see contractors from all over there, but as an association, as an organization, to by default just include everyone, be incredibly inclusive. I think that is nice to have that access to that network, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and a lot of our members have a very heavy America first approach, North America first.
Sure.
Like we have a lot of people that really are trying to push back or bring back the American manufacturing, use American made goods and goods in your services.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, so an American made, I think some people mistake that for United States made, which part of America.
Sure.
Yep. But also our fence family to the north is going to say, hey guys, you're forgetting about the top half of North America. Yeah. We are also on the American continent here. So anyway, it's good to see the inclusiveness there, is the point. Yeah, we need to reach out to our fence family in the southern part of the Americas there, in the Central America, that sort of thing.
If anybody has a contact, have them reach out. I don't have any contacts, but we're happy to have them join.
Absolutely. Well, I'll message you separately because I'll message you after this. I've got an idea on that.
Okay.
Craig Eubank says, if people want to volunteer with Arlington, do they just register, and do you only take a certain number?
There's no cap on how many people that are able to come in. We've seen everywhere from 10 to 15 to 40 to 45, depending on the year, depending on the project. So if you're interested, send us an email, and that way we can include you on the distribution of information for that. Also on our website, you can sign up for our newsletter or just follow our socials, and you'll see all the information getting pushed out for that.
Absolutely. And 15 to 45 might also depend on the time of the day. We took there was a picture before, there was a picture after the event last year, and those pictures are a little different. Those pictures
they were a lot different. It's kind of funny whenever the going gets tough. But no, there was a lot of people had travel arrangements and had to bug out, so it's fun to tease them a little bit about that. But
Well,
completely
and when you hear about service projects, they usually are probably 4 or 5 hours, maybe. They were well, I was going to say they were closing the gates behind us. They actually closed the gates, and then they let us out of them afterwards.
Yes.
And they had somebody who was like, guys, my job now is just stay with you until you leave because you're here after hours at this point. We closed that place down for sure.
That we did.
It was a long day. But now, anytime you go, I tell you what, anytime we go, you can bet I'm telling the kids, hey, you see that fence? You see that post? That post was the worst post of all of these, which, but it seemed like those last few posts just did not want to go.
No, it was just that last little bit just to get over and finish it up.
Yeah, yep. And that's always the way. It seems like no matter what project you're on, the last ones are the worst ones.
Yep.
But, guys, we've got links up here for the Arlington Service Project as well. Learn more about Arlington Service Project here. So you got 4nafca.com/Arlington-National-Cemetery-Service-Project. It's better just to click the link than listen to me try to say that. Clint, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, just to wrap up, or just to circle back around, the number 4nafca.com/NC gets you all the information in North Carolina. Also, reach out to Clint if you're planning on coming out so that you can be put on a distribution list so that as information comes out, you can be one of the first to know. If you're not able to come out, obviously anything helps, right? So that /NC is also a great place to give monetarily if you can't give of your time.
We do have it set up for, online donation, credit card, debit cards, things like that. If you want to cut a check, just send me an email. I will send you our treasurer's address. You can mail a check if that's easier for your organization. Obviously, anything you can do, we appreciate, and we want to be as facilitating to that as possible. So we set it up for online, as obviously that's quick and easy for most people. But if you want to write a check, that's also an option. Absolutely.
And 100% of the funds going to the project, going to the affected area.
That's right.
Very good. Clint, on behalf of NAFCA, I want to say thank you for you guys putting this together, for being so responsive and being on the ball, being the tip of the spear when it comes to the recovery and rebuilding efforts.
It's an important thing to do, and I'm thankful to be able to be part of it and helping to give back that way.
Guys, if you'd like to learn more, again, the number 4nafca.com/NC. Please check that out. Give how you can, whether it's there's 3 typical ways: time, treasure, and talent. So depending on which 3 of those you're more able to give, I'm sure the people of North Carolina and NAFCA would be more than happy to take whichever of those 3 or any combination of those 3.
Absolutely.
One more time, Clint, the dates of the service project.
It's the last weekend in October, which that is, I think, the 25th to the 27th. Yes, Friday the 25th to Sunday the 27th. Again, as we get more details, they'll be put onto the page. But that's our tentative goal. My plan is to leave Thursday night. That way I'm there Friday and Saturday, some Sunday morning, and get back on the road home. But that's the dates.
Got it. Guys, go give NAFCA a follow, depending on which social platforms you're on, and follow that page, 4nafca.com/NC, to stay up to date on that event and just up to the minute, because it sounds like it's still very fluid.
Absolutely.
So, Clint, once again, thank you so much for coming on.
I
know
appreciate
the Saturday morning segment's not an easy one anyway, especially if you're on the road visiting family. So I appreciate you making time.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to share. You obviously have a great network and a great voice, and we appreciate your support of it.
All right. Anytime, any way we can help, we're always happy to. Absolutely.
Appreciate it, sir.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're watching live or you're listening on the podcast. If you're listening on the podcast, we invite you to join us live most every Saturday from 10 a.m. to whenever it ends, Central Standard Time. We'd love to have you guys here live. For now, Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors, and we'll see you next time.